All right, glad to have you back. Nigeria's top 10 banks on the NGX reported a combined pre-tax profit of 2.7 trillion naira for the 6 months ended June 2025, although this represents a 12% decline from the 3.16 trillion naira recorded in the same period last year. It still highlights the sector's solid performance. Profitability remains one of the most important measures of financial health and operational efficiency, an indicator that investors and analysts closely track to assess how well institutions are performing. Pre-tax profits, in simple terms, shows how much a company earns after accounting for operating expenses, impairments, and other costs, but before taxes are deducted. Now, this report examines the performance of Nigeria's top banks in their H1 2025 financial results, most of which have been published, except for Fidelity Bank, which is yet to release its numbers. The focus here is on pre-tax profit amount generated during 6-month period rather than 1 year-on-year changes in performance. With that context, let me say just here are the 10 most profitable Nigerian banks in the first half of 2025. Of course, the major banks are there. But let's get talking and understand what this means, particularly for the larger economy. Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed is my guest. He's live in the studio. He's a stockbroker and also CEO Finance with Mukhtar. Thank you so much. It's good to have you live in the studio, not via Zoom today.
No, not via Zoom today. This is your very beautiful studio.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed. I think we should start with the performance of the banking sector in its entirety, because when I read some of these reports, even some Nigerians are really understand, like, these banks are just going on with big money. What is really happening around that space?
I think sometimes we don't tend to appreciate what the banking system is to the Nigerian economy. I think that's the biggest challenge that we have as a nation. Sometimes people just look at the profitability of the banks and don't look at the name that this bank has given to Nigeria. The most successful economic export we have outside the shore of this country is our financial institutions. When you look at those tier 1 banks, you realize they are in major cities in the world. They are one of the most successful stories that has brought Nigeria to where it is. If you look at innovation that has happened in our economy, you know that it has always been driven by the financial sector. But when you look at our population, then you look at the expansion work that these banks have done, you shouldn't be surprised that these banks are still the most profitable banks in, the banks are doing very well to our economy. So sometimes the challenge is always, you look at the banks, you look at the profit, you look at the bank, you look at the profit, you look at the bank, you look at the profit, and then a lot of people are just like, we are not seeing that synergy between the profit from the bank and the larger economy. But when you look at those numbers critically, you talk about impairment charges, you realize that because of the lending to the real sector, you realize the bank have to make a lot in the area of provision for Nigeria. So for me, I think the banks are one of the most successful we have in the land, and I still think that we'll continue to enjoy those success stories from the bank, and we should appreciate them for what they've been able to do.
Despite the economic headwinds and all of that, we still see that the banks are able to make so much profit. Now, let's delve down to look at some of these performing banks now. I think I have some graphics with regards to Zenith Bank, one of the banks now, where we see their performance for 2025 and what's been playing out around that bank. But before that, we have some financial reports there for Zenith Bank. Key highlights there. We have the gross earnings and all of that. Looking at this, what do you make out of this?
When you look at Zenith Bank as a bank, it has been the most profitable bank in Nigeria for the past 16 years, Tolu. And that numbers keep getting better and better. When you look at profit after tax, you realize they've grown their year-on-year to 16%, which is huge. You look at their customer confidence in terms of confidence to the larger economy, customers confident. You read that they have grown their customer base from about 2.32 trillion to about 3.2 trillion. That's to say how much customers have confidence in the. I'm talking about 23.6 trillion in terms of customer base from 21. So that tells you how much they have confidence in them. You look at also their key area, I mean that there are real areas, real sector growth in terms of bank. Bank is all about income, giving out of loan. If you look at that income space, you realize they have moved from about, from what we have before, which was about 1.9 to about 2.74 trillion. So you could go on and you'll be able to see what. Then the one that excites me most about the Zenith Bank numbers, Tolu, is the shareholders fund also, which has grown also to about 4.7 trillion. This makes it the bank to have a capacity to be able to give advance to their customer and support the larger economy. Then you talk about earning per share. Earning per share is what can come to shareholders. You know, me, I'm more interested in earning per share, of course, because as an investor, that what gives me joy. And it's earning per share is about 18 naira, which is one of the largest in the banking sector. So you see, there's a lot of things they've been able to do. And how have they been able to do this? Like I said, they are the most profitable bank, the highest tier 1 bank in terms of capital. They are the highest, the one that have raised highest capital also, about 360-something billion. That tells you how much people have in them. I'm talking about they are the bank that paid the highest interim dividend this year.
Okay, you're talking about customers' deposit at 23.6 trillion now.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. That means, no, so let's even look outside the money. We're looking at the confidence. Level of confidence. Level of confidence. And that is huge. So you look at those numbers, the income numbers also, the net income. The broader line, you are just excited about what is supposed to come, what is going to happen in Zenith Bank, because currently that share is still seriously undervalued. I was talking about the shareholders fund. Also, you see that also is huge. You also look at liquidity level of the bank. It's very high. That's why the bank can pay. They are the bank that pay the highest interim dividend of 1.25 naira, an increment of 25% from what they normally pay. That despite the headwind of forbearance, and they have exited forbearance. So it's a lot of, and again, you look at how they are able to do this is through expansion. They are not looking at expansion with your capital. There are some African countries, and they've seen how these African countries have been able to drive revenue into their bottom line, and they're beginning to expand. They're beginning to expand in the Francophone company, like places like Côte d'Ivoire. They are going there. They're also looking at East Africa. They're also going to Kenya. They're looking at Congo. They're looking at Cameroon. They're looking at diversifying their economy. And then when you look at it, their digital process is one of the best in the banking. So they have digitalized almost all their process. So it is that, you know, by standard, when you think about the most profitable bank in Nigeria, people tend to think we are just talking, but they have done this for 16 consecutive years, Tolu, and they have been the most profitable bank in Nigeria.
That is really impressive. So a lot of work must be going on behind the scenes there to push out all of this. But talking about confidence, we're talking about a season of recapitalization that the banks, and I'm sure they are one of set of banks that have, of course, met up with.
So they got the highest tier 1 capital. Wow. They had the one that had them. They're so confident. They got about 368 billion from investors that invested in their right issue and the public offer. They didn't just do only right issue. They did public offer, and that's to say, you know, when it's right issue, you know, as an investor, you want to take your right. Then you say, okay, the bank has done all the right, but to see other that were not initially investors in that company say, we also want to be part of this, and they did this, and some of them was oversubscribed. The public offer, and those that the public offer was oversubscribed also. So that tells you there is confidence, not only just the shareholders having confidence in the bank, also those that are not shareholders are fighting to be shareholders.
There will also be quality looking at the loan portfolio of that kind of bank, because, you know, sometimes talk about bad loans and all of that. I don't think
they have a very nice risk management, very prudential risk management posture that they have as a bank. If you look at the kind of provision they have made, you realize how much they have been the risk advert in terms of making sure that their capital, especially for their shareholder capital, are not eroded because of prudent management in terms of giving of these resources out to customers, especially lending to the real sector, and also advancement to customers. That is key these days, because of the headwind of the microeconomy is very, very volatile at this moment because of a lot of inflationary pressure, foreign exchange, volatility. But you could see how they've been able to manage risks in that space.
I'm reading through that, and I'm so impressed. A return on average equities and return on average assets stood at 23.3% and 3.3% respectively. Cost of fund also increased 4.5%, underscored by broader elevated interest rate movement. You talked about the risk management. I'm sure something is really being done. But moving forward, what more would you expect from a performing bank like this?
Well, we expect more, especially when you look at what they've been able to do over the years. They've been consistent in terms of dividend payments. Like I said, the most profitable bank is not just by saying it, you could see the numbers there. So investors are looking forward. You see, they always stand by their word. I remember the last AGM that they had. The bank CEO promised investors that they will begin to enjoy relative returns, good returns. And they've started that, like I said, by increment in 25% in terms of interim dividend. Before now, Zenith Bank were the only bank that one of the banks that paid ₦1 in terms of interim dividend. Despite the headwind, despite issue that has to do with forbearance, exit forbearance, the Zenith Bank confidently was the only bank that was able to up their dividend payout by 25% to their customers. So that tells you what the future looks like.
Even looking at what the central bank has been a bit, some would say being hard on the banks and all of that. I think some of them are still being able to meet up despite the hard rules, I must say, coming from the Apex Bank. Looking at the monetary policy and all of that.
We must also commend the central bank also for what they've been able to do, because again, what they are trying to do as a bank is to make sure that we don't suffer what we suffer in terms of shareholders' funds being eroded, and also banks taking up too many that they can chew, like what happened before. So in all of it, you have to also commend the CBN for the recapitalization drive that they came up with. Those recapitalization branch, that is what a bank like Zenith Bank is using to expand to East Africa, to Central Africa, to looking at South Africa, and also looking at other countries. Remember that they are in Paris. They are also in Paris. They are also in Paris. And they are one of the first banks, also Nigerian bank, that opened branch in China also. They are there also. So you are looking at strategic expansion, not just expanding because you have the capital, but expanding based on strategic reasons.
I read the CEO, the Group Managing Director, Demadora Umeoji, said that the third quarter results reflect unwavering commitment, prudent risk management, which you talked about, compliance and corporate governance culture. She said a lot about this, but the bank's discipline, execution capabilities, and all of that. How does that also come to you? Since she took over, I think a lot has been also happening when women in power. My CEO is also a lady.
You see, I know you go there. When you talk about women in power, I mean, when she came in, I think the price of Zenith Bank was hovering between 23 naira to 24 naira. He has brought it to an all-time high of 78 naira. And that is huge for investors. And also, like I said, he has been consistent in dividend payout and has promised investors that we'll have a bumper year end, which all investors are looking forward to. And she has kept to that by giving us a tip of the iceberg by improving our dividend payout by 25% to all investors. So it's a stock that a lot of investors are very bullish about. In short, the bank book to value ratio as of today is stand at 108 naira. So there's still a lot of potential in Zenith Bank.
I'm seeing that again. The focus is now on innovation, digital transformation. That's according to Dame Umeoji, developing solutions and addressing clients' changing needs, positions, capitalize on emerging opportunities, tech, emerging opportunities.
Let me talk about one thing. Tech, Zenith's good. Innovation, they've been meeting emerging customer need, like what she said. Remember before Natolu, we used to term Zenith Bank to be a bank that is only for corporate guys. You don't see them going to the retail angle. But you can see that, like what you just said, in the customers' numbers, in the numbers in terms of customers' funds that are found there. So that's a bank that's evolving based on the need of the people. So they've been able to improve in their customer. They are now more also into the retail angle. And in that retail banking, they are looking towards advancements of loans and facilities, especially at a time like this for most Nigerians.
So the outlook to you, it looks very, very bright.
Well, let's look at the outlook is very positive. Like I said, the bank book to value ratio of the stock at its stance today is over 108 naira, according to various investors platforms that have given rating to Zenith Bank. And I think that is good news for investors, especially if you're able to key into Zenith Bank at the price that it is now, looking for that bumper adverse promised us in the year.
The CEO has assured that stakeholders will get robust performance combined and improve assets quality, and the bank's strong capital base positions them to deliver exceptional returns with expectations of sustained value creation.
I like that word, exceptional return and sustained value creation.
You're interested in that
return.
We are
interested in that
exceptional returns. Very important.
And she promised that, like I said, she's giving us 25% mid-year. Hopefully, we'll see bigger percentages towards the end of the year.
Before I let you go, just one word on today's trading market. The market is still staying slightly in negative, and we've been seeing that for some time now. I'm a bit worried.
Tolu, there's nothing to worry about. If you are a student of history of the stock market, November is always a time whereby you see those reshuffling. You see those numbers, third quarter numbers have come in. You see those reshuffling in terms of investors looking for goods. You see this movement, this slowdown, the month of November going into December. And by the time you get to December, you now begin to see institutional investors' portfolio reshuffling, and you see to see the market begin to improve. By price in those results on their prices, and you see that the steady movement of that stock. So it's time for value investing. That's what definitely is happening in the market at the moment. You look at value investment, you look at stocks that have very strong fundamentals. We've just spoken about one, Zenith Bank. You also look at other stocks, especially in the consumer goods sector. We have seen those recovery. In the ICT sector, we have seen those recovery also from MTN, Airtel Africa. We've seen that also in the brewery sector from Guinness Nigeria PLC. We see that in the consumer sector from Cadbury, from Nestle. All these banks, all these sectors are beginning to have a positive. So it's a good time for value investing. If you look at the insurance sector, you can't just but talk about the reform that is being embarked upon by the Tinubu administration to recapitalize that sector, to be able to take high ticketing deals. That's another sector that investors should begin to look at. So now, as I will say, it's an opportune time for designing investors that are key in value investment. And value investment is you are looking at the mid-term and the long-term. Definitely the stock market is where to be.
Always where to be. But finally, it's still the end of the year. What happens to our treasury bills and also our putting our money in the even fixed deposits interest now?
So you know what happens once the fixed income space, once you see that rate cut, you definitely begin to see lower yield, and we are beginning to see that in the treasury bill space. We are seeing yield coming to as low as 14, 15 from a height of about 18% before now. So we continue to see that as the CBN continues its rate cutting measure. You know, the rate cutting measure is now becoming a global language for the banks, because the global economy is going to a point of stability. So what you see is that a lot of people will be playing more of the equity market. You see, and that if you look at the Nigeria equity market, you see in terms of volume movement has improved, because a lot of investors that are looking for high return are beginning to exit this fixed income space into the equity market because of the kind of return. Remember again, inflation is also coming down. The lower the inflation comes down, the lower they will have this cut in rate, the lower the return that you have in the fixed income space. But it's still safe haven for investors that are trying to preserve their wealth, especially if you have made it in the equity market. Most of those people that you see in the treasury market, in the fixed income space, are those that have made a lot in terms of capital appreciation in the equity maker. Remember that if there's one sector that have hit the ground running through President Tinubu economic policy, it has been the stock market.
I must thank you so much for your time as always, Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, stockbroker, investment banker, CEO Finance with Mukhtar. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right, then.